My first morning in my new home, I thought I'd finally escaped HOA hell, until a woman I'd never seen walked onto my property, smiled, and crushed my son's model plane under her heel. 10 minutes later, her husband attacked me with a baton, and they lied to the police so well they almost cuffed me. What they didn't know is that my cameras caught every second of their little ambush. I didn't wake up to chaos that morning. I woke up to quiet, the kind of quiet I hadn't heard in years. Not the forced quiet of a neighborhood policed by an overzealous HOA. Not the passive-aggressive quiet of neighbors who peek through blinds and report you for having a red truck or a holiday wreath they don't approve of. No. This was real quiet. A soft breeze pushing through the pine needles outside my bedroom window. The faint creak of the old wood frame settling as the house warmed under the early sun. Somewhere far off, a mourning dove calling into the valley. It felt like stepping into a life I'd once dreamed of, but never quite believed I'd reach. I padded barefoot onto the porch, coffee steaming in my hands, and watched the morning fog lift off the foothills like a curtain rising on a long-awaited performance. After everything I'd been through with my old HOA, the fines, the hearings, the 2-year legal battle that drained my savings and nearly my sanity, standing there on that porch felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I thought I'd lost. This land was mine. 20 acres of unincorporated county soil. No HOA, no compliance committee, no one measuring the length of my grass or the color of my mailbox. When I bought this place, I made sure every line of the deed, every zoning code, every tax map was ironclad. I wasn't about to relive the nightmare I'd just escaped. Inside, the kids were still asleep, exhausted from the move, from the late-night pizza, from the frantic hunt for the cat who'd hidden inside a box labeled winter coats. That messy, chaotic kind of exhaustion. I didn't mind. It was our mess, our home. For the first time in a long time, I felt something close to hope. I took another sip of coffee, feeling the warmth settle into my chest as the fog continued to drift upward into the brightening sky. The driveway looked peaceful, still lined with half-unpacked boxes. A couple of old moving blankets lay crumpled near the U-Haul like abandoned campfires. Nothing urgent, nothing hostile, just life. I thought to myself, this is it. The clean slate, the fresh start, the chapter where everything finally calms down. But just as the thought settled, I noticed something, a flash of silver moving slowly along the road. A car, an SUV, rolling by much slower than any normal passerby would. Not stopping, not honking, just observing. It wasn't unusual enough to alarm me, not yet. People get curious when someone new moves in. Still, something about the way it lingered, the way it hovered at the bend of the road, almost like the driver was taking mental notes, left a faint scratch on the back of my mind. I brushed it off. If I'd known what was coming later that day, if I'd known how quickly peace can crack, how fast old nightmares can crawl into new beginnings, I might have paid more attention. But that morning, I just lifted my coffee again and let myself believe I was finally free. I had just finished the last sip of my coffee when I heard footsteps, sharp, confident, and completely unfamiliar, coming up the gravel drive. Not the hesitant steps of a neighbor dropping by to say hello. Not the hurried steps of a delivery driver on a tight schedule. No. These footsteps had direction. Like the person walking them already believed they had every right in the world to be there. When I turned, I saw her. A woman in a fitted navy blazer, dark sunglasses, and a haircut so precise it looked like it had been measured with a ruler. She wasn't carrying a welcome basket or a note. No smile, no warmth. Just a leather folder tucked under her arm like a weapon she'd been trained to use. And without a single word, she walked straight across my lawn, and stopped 10 feet from where I stood. For a moment, neither of us spoke. She just stood there, chin lifted slightly like she was inspecting a property line she already believed she owned. Finally, she said, "Good morning. You must be the new occupant." Her tone wasn't friendly. It wasn't curious. It was evaluative, like I was a student and she was grading me before class had even begun. "Yes, ma'am," I replied, keeping my voice level. "Can I help you with something?" She removed her sunglasses in one slow, deliberate motion. "I'm Karen Fowler, president of the High Pines Preserve Homeowners Association." I blinked once, twice. Not because the name surprised me, though the irony of meeting another Karen wasn't lost on me, but because it was the last group of people I expected to hear about out here. This area has recently been incorporated into our community boundaries, she continued. Your property now falls under High Pines jurisdiction. I'm here to provide your membership documents. She opened her folder, pulling out a thick stack of papers covered in highlighted sections and bright sticky notes. I didn't take them. Instead, I let out a short breath, the kind that carries equal parts disbelief and annoyance. Then I said, in the calmest voice I could muster, "Ma'am, I've been reading maps since before you learned to spell the words power trip. This is unincorporated county land. I pay taxes to the county, not to your quilting club." Her lips tightened, the kind of tight that says she wasn't used to being challenged. "This is the updated boundary map," she insisted, thrusting the papers toward me again. "You are required to comply with all High Pines HOA regulations, starting immediately. That includes restrictions on vehicles, construction materials, and exterior structures." I didn't move. I didn't touch the papers. Instead, I pointed to the end of my driveway. "Step off my property, ma'am." Her expression flickered, surprise, then irritation, then a cold, simmering anger. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," I said. "Take your map and walk yourself right back down that driveway, because this land isn't under your HOA. Not now, not ever." She squared her shoulders. "You don't understand how this works," she snapped. "High Pines has legal authority over this area. Your refusal to comply could result in penalties, significant ones." I kept my eyes on hers, steady, unblinking. "Show me the law," I said softly. "Show me the jurisdiction. Show me any authority you think you have here." Her jaw clenched. The papers in her hand rustled with the tremor of frustration. So, I added, with a slow, deliberate count, "You have 10 seconds to leave before I consider this trespassing. 10, 9. She took a step back. Not because she wanted to, because she had to. The kind of retreat someone makes when they suddenly realizes the ground beneath them isn't as solid as they thought. At the turn of the driveway, she stopped, turned sharply, and said, "You're making a mistake. People who don't work with the community usually don't last long." Then she walked away, heels cracking against the gravel like warning shots fading into the distance. I stood there in the quiet she left behind, a different quiet than before, a quiet that tasted like a storm inching closer. And deep down, I knew this wasn't the end of her, not even close. I didn't expect to see her again so soon. After she marched off earlier, I figured I'd have at least a day, maybe even a week, before whatever storm she was brewing circled back. But barely 3 hours later, while the sun was climbing and the heat settled thick across the yard, I heard those footsteps again. Fast, hard, purposeful. I stepped out of the garage, and there she was. Karen Fowler. No sunglasses this time, no smile, just anger drawn across her face like a mask carved too tight. "Mr. Burke," she barked, "I'm not done with you." I kept my posture relaxed, though something cold tugged at the back of my mind. "I told you already," I said. "You're trespassing." "I tried being civil," she snapped, "but your refusal to comply puts you in direct violation of High Pines HOA statutes." I didn't bother pretending this made sense. Before I could answer, her attention shifted, downward, toward the moving box beside my porch, the one Ethan had carefully labeled in the big blue marker, "Do not crush, model plane." She stopped, completely. Her eyes traced the letters slowly, studying them, and then she did something I will never forget. She looked up at me, held my gaze, and smiled. Not a polite smile, not a friendly smile, a cold, predatory curl of the lips, the kind someone wears when they've just found the softest place to stab. She lifted her foot, shifted her weight, and pressed down on the box. I stepped forward instinctively. "Ma'am, don't do that." Her smile deepened. Then she leaned her full weight onto the cardboard. Crunch! The sound tore through the air, plastic snapping, wood cracking, foam collapsing into dust. A wing spilled out of the torn seam. Then, the broken fuselage. A small black wheel rolled across the porch until it gently tapped my boot and went still. I didn't breathe for a moment. That sound, that awful, brittle sound, echoed inside my head longer than it lasted in the air. Karen lifted her foot as casually as if she had stepped on a leaf. "Well," she said lightly, "guess he can build another one. Children need discipline, you know." My voice came out lower, tighter, steadier than the anger boiling inside me. "That belonged to my son." She shrugged. "Then teach him not to leave trash lying around." The anger didn't explode. It condensed. A tight weight settling behind my ribs, cold and dangerous. "Step away from the box," I said quietly. She rolled her eyes, turned, and marched toward the U-Haul like she owned every inch of it. Then she reached for the ramp latch. "What do you think you're doing?" I asked. "Inspecting community property," she snapped. "That truck isn't yours," I said, moving toward her, "and neither is a single square foot of this land." She yanked harder, metal clanking. I stepped in, slammed the latch shut before she could open it. She jerked back dramatically. "You assaulted me," she shrieked. "I didn't touch you. You blocked me, same thing." "No, ma'am, not even close." Her hand dove into her pocket, phone out, thumb already hitting emergency. Because that's what she wanted, a scene, a narrative, a moment she could twist. Right then, watching the fury and calculation in her eyes, I understood. The crushed airplane wasn't a moment of anger. It was a message. She wasn't trying to annoy me. She was trying to break me, and the crunch was only her opening shot. Karen's scream was still ringing in the air when I heard it. A sound that didn't belong in a quiet patch of unincorporated county land. An engine, low, aggressive, roaring up the gravel road fast enough to kick up a plume of dust that hung behind it like wildfire smoke. I turned toward the bend. A black pickup shot into view and barreled straight into my driveway. The brakes slammed, the front bumper dipped, and dust rolled past it in a thick cloud. The driver's door flew open, and a man stepped out. Tall, wide through the shoulders, packed into a faded Fowler Security Services jacket that looked stretched across muscle. Mirrored sunglasses hid whatever humanity might have been behind them. His boots hit the ground with the weight of someone who didn't arrive anywhere. He took ground when he walked. He didn't ask who I was. He already knew. "You Jonathan Burke?" he barked, closing the distance without slowing. I kept my hands loose at my sides. "Yes." He jabbed a finger so close to my face, I could see the dirt under his nail. "You put your hands on my wife." Behind him, Karen's voice rose instantly, like she'd been waiting for her cue. "That's him, Richard! He assaulted me! Look at my arm!" She lifted the same arm she'd scraped earlier. Fake tremble, fake fear, real malice. Richard didn't even check the arm. His jaw flexed once, and his hand went straight for the baton clipped to his belt. He drew it with a practiced snap. "You think you can intimidate her?" he growled. "This isn't your property," I said evenly. "And I didn't touch her." He didn't care. He wanted a target, and he'd decided that target was me. He stepped in, raising the baton high, muscles coiled. Then he swung, a heavy, reckless arc meant to break bone. But I'd seen that kind of swing before. I stepped inside it, grabbed his wrist with both hands, twisted hard across the joint. Clean, controlled. Richard grunted, fingers snapping open, and the baton flew from his hand. Clang! It struck the gravel, skidded, and came to rest right beside Karen's shoes. She froze for half a beat, just long enough for fear to flash across her face. Richard dropped to one knee, gasping from the pain shooting up his arm. I stepped back immediately, hands visible. "Walk away," I said quietly. "It doesn't have to go further." But humiliation burns hotter than injury. He surged back to his feet with a roar, now fighting with nothing but brute force. He grabbed the collar of my shirt with both fists and drove me backward. We slammed into a moving box, sending it toppling. A lamp slid out and shattered, glass exploding across the porch like ice hitting stone. Karen shrieked, performing for an audience that hadn't even arrived yet. "He's attacking Richard! He's killing him! Help!" Richard pulled back a fist, messy, wild. I deflected, pivoted my weight, and shoved him just enough to break his grip. Not a strike, not escalation, just space. He stumbled 3 steps, breathing like a bull ready to charge. He lowered his head, and that's when the world snapped. "Police! Hands up! Don't move!" Red and blue lights strobed across the pine trees. 2 county deputies sprinted up the driveway. But their eyes weren't on Richard. They weren't on Karen. They were locked straight on me. One deputy drew his pistol halfway out of its holster. "You in the dark shirt, step back. Hands where I can see them. Now." Karen immediately dissolved into sobs, clutching her arm like a wounded actress. Richard hunched over, panting, playing the victim role with disgusting ease. And me? I slowly raised my hands, feeling the weight of the moment settle into my bones. Because this exact misunderstanding was what Karen had been engineering since the second she stepped onto my property. The trap was finally sprung. And from where the deputies were standing, it looked like I was the one who had set it. There's a very specific feeling a man gets when he realizes the law has walked into a situation at the worst possible moment. It's not fear, not exactly. It's the cold, sinking weight of knowing. The truth is about to lose the first round. The deputies came in fast, boots slamming gravel, hands hovering at their holsters. Their eyes scanned the scene, but not evenly, not fairly. One look at Richard, red-faced, hunched, breathing heavy like he'd been the one under attack, and one look at Karen, sobbing, clutching her fake injury. And their instincts locked onto the person who looked the most calm, the most stable. Me. "Sir," one deputy barked, finger pointing at my chest. "Keep those hands where I can see them and step away from him." Richard stumbled backward like he couldn't bear the terror of being near me, even though he'd been the one swinging. Karen let out a dramatic cry and fell against the side of the truck like a Victorian damsel who'd fainted at bad news. Theatrics, every bit of it. But the deputies, they didn't know the script. "Face away from me," the older deputy shouted. "Do it now." I did not argue. A man arguing with deputies, especially on his own property in the middle of chaos, is a man signing paperwork he doesn't want to sign. So I turned slowly, hands up, palms clear. "Sir, we got a call about an assault," the younger deputy said, moving in behind me. "2 victims reporting injuries. We need you to remain still." Victims. Plural. Karen's sobs grew louder, messy, high-pitched, perfectly timed. I'd give her this much. The woman could have had a Hollywood career if she hadn't chosen HOA terrorism instead. He attacked us," she cried. "Look at my arm. Look what he did to me." I didn't turn, didn't twist, didn't speak yet. But inside, anger simmered low, controlled, not boiling. The kind of anger a man only learns after life has already broken him once before. "Sir," the older deputy said again, voice firmer, "keep your hands visible. We're going to sort this out." "No, no!" Karen screamed. "Arrest him before he hurts someone else." Richard added a cough, a groan, something between agony and performance art. He slammed me on the ground," he growled, "tried to take my head off." The younger deputy moved closer behind me. I could feel the shift in his position. The air changed. He was preparing to cuff me. Karen must have sensed it too, because she stopped crying just long enough to smile behind her moisture-glossed theatrics. A small smile, the kind a fox gives a chicken just before the farmer looks away. "Sir," the deputy said quietly, "I need you to place your hands behind your back." There it was, the words Karen had been hunting for since the moment she saw me. Her victory. Or so she thought. I took a slow breath. "My hands will stay where you can see them," I said evenly. "But I'm not turning my back on an armed man who attacked me." Both deputies stiffened. The younger one shifted again. Richard snarled, "He's lying! He came at me!" "That baton on the ground," I said, nodding toward it without lowering my arms, "didn't fall out of the sky." Both deputies glanced toward it. Good. A seed planted. "I didn't touch either of them until I had to defend myself," I continued. "I have video evidence of the entire thing." Karen exploded instantly. "He's lying! He's lying! He made that up!" That reaction, sharp, panicked, too fast, was the first crack in her mask. I kept going, voice calm. "There's a camera over the garage, another on the porch, full audio, continuous recording." The older deputy hesitated. Just a heartbeat. But in tension, this thick, one heartbeat feels like a verdict-changing direction. Karen noticed it too, and doubled down. Hard. You can't trust him," she screamed. "He threatened me. He said horrible things. He broke my sons—" She caught herself. She didn't have a son. Her eyes darted. A fatal mistake. Richard stepped forward, pointing at me, raising his voice. "Just cuff him. He's dangerous." That was the moment I'd been waiting for. I turned slightly, slow, not sudden, and spoke clearly. "Deputies, before you do anything else, you should see what actually happened." Then, without lowering my hands, I tilted my head toward my pocket. "There's a tablet in my right pocket linked to the garage camera. You can retrieve it, but I'm not moving until you tell me to." Silence. Richard froze. Karen's eyes widened, only for a blink, but enough. The older deputy finally said, "All right, don't move." He approached cautiously, keeping one hand on his holster while reaching into my pocket for the tablet. Karen stammered, No, there's no need. You don't need to. Just arrest him. He's dangerous." And that was it. Deputies aren't lawyers. They aren't judges. But they know one thing better than anyone. The guilty always panic when evidence enters the room. The older deputy unlocked the tablet. The screen lit up. And the moment the live camera feed appeared, showing the exact angle of the destroyed model airplane, the U-Haul, the torn boxes, the baton in the dirt, he looked at me. Not with hostility, with realization. Then he looked at Karen. Something in his face changed, like a man who just discovered he'd been reading the map upside down. And for the first time since the deputies arrived, I felt the weight on my chest loosen, not lifted, not gone, but shifting, because the truth had finally stepped onto the field. The deputy held the tablet like it was evidence already, not yet knowing which side it belonged to, only knowing it carried weight. He tapped the screen, switched to playback, and scrubbed back 2 hours. Karen took a sharp step forward. No, you can't just watch. This isn't legal. You can't." The older deputy lifted one finger without looking at her. "Ma'am, not another word." Her mouth snapped shut, though her eyes kept screaming. The recording began. And there it was. Everything. The audio picked up first, my voice, calm and steady. Then hers, sharp, condescending, escalating. Her marching across the lawn like she owned it, her rifling through the boxes, her stepping onto the one marked, "Do not crush," model plane. Even before the sound reached the moment, I felt it again. That sickening weight in my chest. Then the microphone caught it. Wunch. Plastic snapping, wood cracking, the tiny wheel bouncing to rest. The deputy's eyebrows rose just slightly, not enough to show judgment, but enough to show awareness. Karen lunged toward him like a panicked animal. "That's taken out of context. He provoked, he threatened." "Ma'am," he said again, firmer, "step back." She froze, not out of respect, out of fear that if she said more, the truth might sharpen. The footage continued. Karen tugging the U-Haul latch, me stopping her without touching her, her grabbing her phone, her declaration of assault, false, theatrical, loud. Richard's truck flying into the driveway, the baton clearly visible on his belt. The deputies leaned closer, Richard stepping out, jaw clenched, posture aggressive, Karen pointing, crying on command, Richard drawing the baton, intentionally, unmistakably. Then the swing, then the disarm, then the baton flying from his hand. Clang! The deputy paused the video, zoomed in on the baton. "Ma'am," he said without looking away, "is this the weapon your husband claims Mr. Burke used to attack him?" Karen sputtered. No, it wasn't, that's not." Her voice tripped over its own inventions. The deputy hit play again, Richard grabbing me, the collision with the box, me stepping back, disengaging, hands open. Not once, not a single frame, did I strike him. The deputy let the video roll long enough for the weight of reality to land on everyone. Then he exhaled, a slow, measured breath of a man who just finished assembling a puzzle and finally saw the whole picture. He turned to me. "Mr. Burke, looks like you've been truthful." Then he turned to Karen. His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "Ma'am, I'm going to ask you one thing, and I want you to think carefully before you answer." He gestured toward the screen. "Is there any part of the statement you gave us that aligns with what we are seeing here?" Karen's jaw worked soundlessly. Her eyes darted to Richard, searching for a cue, a lie, a lifeline, and found none. He looked smaller now, not physically, but in posture, in confidence, like the weight of the truth had deflated him. The deputy continued. False reporting is a criminal offense. So is trespassing. So is property destruction. So is child endangerment, considering the nature of what you broke. Karen gasped. Child? No, I didn't. It was just a toy. It belonged to his son. Silence. Even the breeze seemed to stop out of respect for the moment. The younger deputy, who had been quiet until now, finally spoke. Sir, he said to me, thank you for staying calm. A lot of folks wouldn't have. I nodded once. He turned to Karen and Richard. Ma'am, sir, step over here. Hands behind your back. Karen's face went pale. Her mascara streaked. Her mouth fell open like a door unlatched in a storm. You can't arrest us. We're the victims. But the deputy cut her off with a tone that carried the weight of finality. Victims don't lie, and victims don't get caught on camera doing what you did. The rattling of handcuffs filled the driveway. For the first time all day, I breathed without effort. Not victory, not triumph, just the quiet truth finally being allowed to speak for itself. There's a particular sound handcuffs make when they close around a wrist, a metallic click that carries no anger, no emotion, just finality. That sound echoed across my driveway as the deputies moved in. Karen jerked back the moment the older deputy reached for her arm. No, this is insane. I'm the one who called you. He's dangerous. He's violent. Ma'am, the deputy said, his patience worn thin, place your hands behind your back. She didn't. Instead, she threw her arms wide like she was delivering a monologue on a stage only she could see. You have no idea who I am. I'm the HOA president. This entire community relies on me to maintain order. You can't just... She didn't finish. The deputy gently but firmly took her wrist and turned her around. Click. Her breath caught in her throat. Part outrage, part disbelief. She looked over her shoulder at me. Mascara streaked down her cheeks like black lightning. You'll regret this, she hissed. Her voice wasn't loud anymore, just sharp, almost cracked. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. Richard's arrest played out very differently. Where Karen fought with words, Richard fought with posture, squaring his shoulders, tensing his jaw, puffing his chest like a man trying to remember what intimidation feels like after losing it. Turn around, sir, the younger deputy ordered. Richard didn't move. His eyes darted toward the baton lying in the gravel, then toward the house, then toward me. For a moment I saw in him not rage, but calculation. He was looking for an option, any option, but there weren't any left. The deputy's voice hardened. Sir, hands behind your back, now. Slowly, reluctantly, like gravity was dragging him down, Richard turned. Click, click. 2 bracelets of reality locked around his wrists. And just like that, the man who had burst onto my land ready to swing a weapon now stood still, chest heaving, eyes emptying of whatever fire he had arrived with. Across the yard, I saw movement in the window. Ethan, my boy, peeking through the curtains, his face half hidden behind the fabric. His sister right beside him, clutching her stuffed dinosaur against her chest. 2 little silhouettes frozen in a house they had barely begun to call home. I gave them a small nod. A quiet promise that things were under control. They didn't move, but I saw their shoulders loosen a little. The deputies guided Karen and Richard toward the patrol car. Richard walked stiffly, chin down, fury smoldering but contained. Karen tried for dignity all the way to the door. It's not too late to fix this, she shouted. You're making a mistake. I'll have your badges. This whole place depends on me. But the world wasn't listening anymore. The deputy opened the door. Karen stumbled in. Her voice finally broke, thinning into something small. The door shut with a heavy thud. That thud carried more truth than any argument I could have made. Richard was eased into the other side. No yelling, no threats, just silence. The kind of silence a man carries when the bravado has drained out and only consequences remain. The older deputy approached me once they were secured. You all right, Mr. Burke? He asked, handing back the tablet. I nodded. My kids saw some of it, I said quietly. That's the part I hate. He followed my glance toward the window. They're safe, he said. And, for what it's worth, you handled yourself a lot calmer than most folks would have. That helped us see what really happened. Behind him, the patrol car engine rumbled to life. Lights flashed once, blue, red, blue, washing the pines in brief color. Then the car rolled forward, tires crunching over gravel, carrying Karen and Richard away. Their silhouettes shrank behind the tinted glass until the trees swallowed them. The dust settled, the quiet returned. But it wasn't the same peaceful quiet I'd heard that morning. This one felt earned, heavy, like the air was finally exhaling after holding its breath too long. I stood there for a long moment, feeling the last of the tension slide off my shoulders. The fight wasn't over, not by a long shot, but for the first time that day, the battlefield finally belonged to the truth. The house was quieter that evening, but it wasn't the peaceful quiet from that first morning. This one had weight in it, like the walls were waiting to hear what came next. I sat at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee gone lukewarm, when my lawyer, Theo Hayes, called back. Theo doesn't rush anything, never has. He speaks the way old trees grow, slow, steady, deliberate. But the moment I finished telling him what happened, his tone changed. "Jonathan," he said, "I need to come over, tonight." 25 minutes later, his car pulled up the drive. He walked in with a leather briefcase older than both of us and set it on the table with the solemnity of a doctor delivering test results. "All right," he said, "show me everything." I replayed the footage for him, the trespass, the crushing of the model plane, the assault, the false report, the baton, the lies, the theatrics. He didn't interrupt once. When the last frame froze on the screen, Theo leaned back, exhaled, and tapped the table twice. "That," he said, "is a civil lawsuit gift wrapped in 4K. But then he opened his briefcase and pulled out something that made my stomach tighten. A large county zoning map, spread out in a grid across my entire table. Lines, colors, highlighted sections, all the messy geometry of local politics. He slid it toward me. "You see this?" he said, pointing at a thick green boundary line. "That's the legitimate High Pines HOA border, filed, approved, legal." Then he took out a second map, the one Karen had shown me, the one she'd waved like a weapon. He laid it directly on top of the real one. Even before the edges aligned, I could see it. The HOA boundary line was shifted, not by a little, but by a full 80 yards, enough to cross the creek, enough to swallow my acreage whole. My jaw tightened. Theo picked up a red pen, one of those thin felt-tip ones lawyers seem to be born with, and slowly drew a bold stroke around my land. It connected 2 points on the fraudulent map that shouldn't have been connected at all. "Jonathan," he said, "this wasn't a mistake." He moved the pen again, circling a different area. "Your land sits right here, the only strip of property blocking their access to this." He tapped a tan-colored section labeled "Proposed Expansion, High Pines Golf Club, Phase 2. A golf course, of course. "They need your land," Theo continued, "because the planned new entrance, cart path, and maintenance road can't be built unless the HOA annexes this corner of the county." I shook my head slowly. "So, they tried to draw me in on paper first." "Oh, they didn't just try," he replied. "They filed it, fraudulently, and Karen," he pointed at the crushed model plane still sitting on the counter, "was sent to intimidate you into compliance before you challenged it." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "This is bigger than Karen, bigger than Richard. This is a board-level operation." "And they picked the wrong property," I said quietly. Theo nodded. "And the wrong owner." He took out another document, a county survey dated 10 years before the HOA even existed. "Your land is what we call grandfathered unincorporated territory. It cannot be annexed without your consent. They knew this. They hoped you didn't." I felt a slow heat rise in my chest. Not anger yet, but something more focused. "What happens now?" I asked. Theo clicked his pen closed. "Now," he said, "we prepare a civil suit. Property rights violations, fraudulent annexation, false reporting, trespass, destruction of personal property, and emotional distress." He paused, eyes narrowing. "And once I subpoena their board records, we'll find out exactly who forged that map." My mind drifted to my kids asleep upstairs, to the smashed plane, to the fear in their voices, to the quiet hope they had for a new beginning. Nobody was going to take that from them. The house no longer felt heavy. It felt ready. Theo packed up his maps, gave me a solid pat on the shoulder, and said before leaving, Sleep well tonight, Jonathan, because tomorrow we make them wish they'd never stepped foot on your land. The next morning, the sun hadn't fully cleared the ridge yet, but I was already up, moving slow, shoulder sore, mind wired. The kids were quiet at breakfast, not scared anymore, just watching me, as if trying to figure out whether yesterday had been an ending or the start of something worse. I was rinsing my coffee mug when I heard a soft knock on the front door, not pounding, not entitled, just a hesitant, almost apologetic tap. When I opened the door, a man stood there, thin, gray around the edges, wearing the green maintenance shirt from High Pines. I recognized him. He'd been trimming hedges near the entrance that first day I drove in, the same day Karen stormed up my driveway. He'd lifted a hand in a small wave then, only for Karen to snap at him moments later for standing around. Now he looked like he'd aged 5 years overnight. "Mr. Burke," he said, voice low. "That's me." He glanced over his shoulder, scanning the tree line like he expected someone to be watching. Then he reached into his pocket and held out a small flash drive, pinched between 2 trembling fingers. "You didn't get this from me," he said. My brows tightened. "What is it?" "Proof," he whispered. "About the map, about Karen, about the board." His hands shook, not from fear of me, but from fear of being seen. I opened the door wider. "You want to come inside?" He shook his head hard. "No, they monitor our GPS when we're on shift." His eyes moved again, jittery. "I shouldn't be here." "Why help me?" I asked. He swallowed, Adam's apple bobbing. "Because I've watched her do this to too many people. Old folks, single moms, anybody who can't fight back," he said. "They bully them until they pay up or move out. But yesterday, when those handcuffs clicked," he stopped, a small breath of relief slipping through. "It was the first time I felt like someone finally stood up to her." He pressed the flash drive into my palm. "Watch the file labeled July 14th board meeting, and don't tell anyone I came." Before I could say another word, he turned and walked briskly down the driveway, disappearing into the mist like a man escaping a burning building. Inside, I plugged the flash drive into my old laptop, the one I used only for junk files in case this whole thing turned out to be malware or bait. There was only one video, a Zoom recording. HOA board meeting. July 14th, timestamp, 8:03 p.m. Karen appeared on screen first, in her signature blazer, sitting in front of a meticulously arranged bookcase. Around her, 4 board members, faces stiff, eyes tired, and then another window caught my eye. A man labeled Don S., vice president, polished, calm, a predator wearing a polite smile. 10 minutes in, the conversation shifted. Karen cleared her throat. "We need to talk about the buffer zone properties," she said. "They're technically outside our reach, but if we don't move quickly, we'll lose the Gulf expansion." Don leaned forward. "Well," he said, "as long as the paperwork gets filed before the homeowner challenges it, we're golden." Another board member hesitated. "Isn't that risky?" Don shrugged. "Most people don't fight, and if they do, the legal fund can hold them off long enough to drain them. We're not doing anything illegal, just discouraging independence." Karen nodded sharply. "We'll start with the new guy on the hill. He looks like trouble." The room chuckled. I didn't. The video kept playing. Talk of fees, fines, legal pressure, strategies for compliance retention. It was organized, structured, predatory. Not an HOA, a racket. I sat back in my chair as the recording ended, the screen fading to black. For a long moment, the room felt cold, even with morning light coming in. Then I exhaled slowly. Theo had been right. This wasn't about one angry woman, or a misfiled map, or a territorial dispute. It was a machine, and Karen was just one gear inside it. But they'd made a mistake. They picked a property with cameras, and an owner who refused to fold. I reached for my phone. It was time to call Theo again. I didn't plan on posting anything. Honestly, after everything that happened, I just wanted a quiet day. A normal morning with my kids, a cup of coffee that didn't taste like adrenaline. But Theo insisted. "Get the truth out early," he said, "before they spin their own narrative." So that afternoon, after reviewing the footage one more time, I uploaded a short clip. Just 40 seconds. No dramatic music, no angry captions. Just simple text laid over raw security footage. She said I assaulted her. This is what actually happened. I put my phone down after posting, not expecting much. But the internet had other plans. Within an hour, 50,000 views. By dinner, 200,000. By the time the kids were in bed and the house had gone quiet again, over 500,000. The comments rolled in faster than I could read them. People sharing their own HOA nightmares. Ridiculous fines, petty power trips, horror stories about neighbors who turned into tyrants as soon as they got a clipboard and a title. Some comments were furious. File the biggest lawsuit you can. Throw the whole HOA in court. This is why we need HOA reform in America. Others were almost heartbreaking. My mom lost her home because of people like her. They bullied us for years. Wish I'd had cameras like yours. Then came the stitches, people reacting to the clip, a retired Marine shaking his head, a lawyer explaining HOA boundary laws, a carpenter rebuilding a model plane on stream for the kid, a grandmother saying softly, "Bless your children, they didn't deserve to see that." By midnight, the video hit 1.2 million views. That was when the messages started, a local newspaper reporter, then a community watchdog group, then a regional CBS affiliate asking if they could send a small crew. I wasn't sure about that one. I never liked cameras, not the ones pointed at me anyway. But Theo told me something that stuck. Sunlight, he said, is the best disinfectant. So the next morning, I agreed. A young reporter named Vanessa arrived with a cameraman, kind eyes, gentle voice, professional but with empathy tucked between her words. She interviewed me on the porch, standing right where Karen had screamed her accusations. I walked her through the footage, the map, the annexation scheme. She didn't rush me. She didn't sensationalize it. She just let the truth breathe. When it aired that night, the story was framed simply, "Homeowner exposes fraudulent HOA tactics. Footage contradicts claims of assault. Balanced, clear, fair." But the internet? The internet is never fair or balanced. The video exploded again, reaching another million overnight. People began digging. Screenshots of Karen's old neighborhood association popped up. Someone found Richard's security company profile. People identified other homeowners who had been targeted. And the comments took a darker turn. Find her address. Expose her family. Get him fired. That was when I made a second post. Not angry, just firm. I looked directly into the camera and said, "Listen, I appreciate the support, but don't harass them. Let the law handle this. We do this the right way." The video surprised people. It calmed the fire without extinguishing the truth. Most folks respected it. A few even commented, "This guy's a better man than me. Integrity like this is rare. No wonder they picked the wrong homeowner." By the end of the week, I wasn't just the man who caught an HOA president lying on camera. I was the man who stood his ground, but didn't let anger turn him into something worse. And that mattered more than I expected. But while the public attention grew, something else was happening behind the scenes. Something bigger, more dangerous. Theo called me on a Thursday evening. His first words were, "Jonathan, you're not going to believe what we found in their financial records." And just like that, I realized the viral storm wasn't the end of anything. It was merely the spark. The real fight was still ahead. Theo called me the next morning, his voice steady but carrying a weight I didn't like. "Jonathan," he said, "I think we just opened a door we can't close. Come to my office, now." When a lawyer talks like that, you don't ask questions. You grab your keys. His office felt different this time. Not the usual quiet confidence of a man who has seen every trick in the book, but the sharp stillness you feel right before a storm breaks. He motioned me into a seat and laid 3 folders between us. Thick, overstuffed, worn at the edges, like they'd been handled too many times in too few hours. "Before I show you this," he said, "I want you to understand something. What happened to you wasn't personal." I frowned. "Tell that to Karen." "Oh, she made it personal," he said. "But the machine behind her, that's business, bad business." He opened the first folder. Inside were complaints, dozens of them, from homeowners across High Pines. I scanned the pages, and a cold anger tightened in my gut. A retired couple fined $6,000 for non-compliant garden stones. A widowed mother threatened with foreclosure over a shed permit issue. A disabled veteran charged $300 a week for having a service ramp that didn't match the aesthetic. And across half the cases, a pattern. Forced annexation. Fake map boundaries. Bullying disguised as compliance. My hands curled into fists. "You're not the first," Theo said quietly. "But you're the first with airtight video, and the first they underestimated." He opened the second folder. This one wasn't complaints. It was bank statements. I leaned forward. "You see these?" Theo pointed to a string of transactions. Monthly transfers, small enough to avoid attention. But over 2 years, they add up. The statements showed payments made to Greenline Strategic Advisors, Vista Boundary Solutions, Urban Terrain Consulting. Different names, but all 3 companies shared the same owner, Don Sanders, the HOA vice president, the man calmly describing draining homeowners in the Zoom call. I stared at the numbers. "So, he created shell companies," I said, "then paid himself using HOA dues." Theo nodded slowly. "Embezzlement, fraud, racketeering if a prosecutor wants to push it. And Jonathan, it's a lot of money, more than enough to make people look the other way." He slid the last folder toward me. "This," he said, "is what ties it all together." Inside were internal HOA emails, obtained legally through a homeowner on the board who'd finally had enough. One message from Don read, "Border expansion must be pushed through before Q4. Homeowners who resist should be overwhelmed with notices until they comply or leave." Another from Karen. "The new guy on the hill is confident. I'll handle him personally. He won't last long." I felt a heat rise in my chest. Not rage, but something heavier. A quiet certainty that this wasn't just harassment. This was predation. Theo leaned back, rubbing his eyes. "This is no longer about your property, Jonathan. This is systemic corruption. You walked into a nest of it without knowing." I exhaled slowly. "So what's the plan?" He tapped the folders. "We file a civil suit today, not just against Karen and her husband, but against the entire HOA board." He paused. "And we forward all financial records to the district attorney. Some of this crosses into felony territory." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A video message from an unknown number. I opened it. It was shaky footage, recorded from the back of a crowded HOA meeting room. Angry voices filled the air. "You lied to us, Don. You said everything was legal. You used HOA money to pay your own companies. We could go to jail because of you." I watched the board implode, shouting, accusing, panicking. Don trying to talk over them, sweat pouring down his neck. "This is being blown out of proportion," he barked. But no one listened. Someone shouted, "Burke has evidence. The county knows. The DA is asking questions." Theo watched over my shoulder. "That," he said softly, "is the sound of a corrupt system collapsing." I turned off the phone. For the first time since moving in, my land didn't feel like a battleground. It felt like ground worth defending. Theo gathered the folders, stacked them neatly, and said with quiet certainty, "Jonathan, we're not just going to win this. We're going to clean house." The case didn't take months. It took weeks. When fraud is sloppy and the truth is clean, the legal system moves faster than people expect. Theo filed our suit on a Monday. By Wednesday, the HOA board had hired 2 separate law firms. By Friday, the county announced an internal review into every boundary change High Pines had filed in the last 3 years. And the following week, the district attorney stepped in. It's funny. Bad people think they're playing chess when really they're playing against gravity. And gravity always wins. The first hearing was held in a small courtroom downtown. Nothing dramatic, no jury, no cameras, just a judge, a clerk, and 2 rows of wooden benches that creaked every time someone shifted. Karen arrived first, no blazer, just a plain beige sweater, and a face drained of the heat and arrogance that once fueled her. Richard came next, escorted by a deputy. 3 months in county jail had pulled all the swagger out of him. His shoulders slumped, his eyes stayed low. Then came the board members, 6 of them, each carrying folders like shields. Their murmurs died when Theo and I walked in. The judge reviewed the filings quietly, flipping through the annexation documents, the financial records, the internal emails, and finally my security footage. He didn't look shocked. He looked disappointed, like a man who had seen this pattern one too many times. When he finally spoke, his voice was tired but clear. "This court finds," he began, that the High Pines Preserve Homeowners Association engaged in unlawful expansion of authority, knowingly submitted falsified boundary documents, and attempted to extort multiple property owners, including Mr. Burke, through coercion, harassment, and fraud. Karen's head dropped. Richard closed his eyes. The judge continued. Furthermore, the court finds that Mr. Burke acted in lawful self-defense and exercised restraint during a confrontation initiated by individuals who were trespassing on his property. He paused, letting the words settle. The civil claims brought by Mr. Burke are upheld. Then he read the penalties. Karen, guilty of filing a false report, trespass, and destruction of property. 18 months probation, mandatory counseling, a formal written apology, a restraining order prohibiting her from coming within 500 feet of my land. Richard, guilty of assault and battery, 90 days in county jail, $10,000 fine, permanent mark on his security license. The board, held financially liable for damages, forced to dissolve pending county audit. All annexation claims formally reversed. And then the judge added one final line. Mr. Burke's property is hereby affirmed as unincorporated land outside any HOA jurisdiction, now and in the future. A sentence so simple, but it hit like thunder in my chest. Theo placed a hand on my shoulder. A quiet nod of victory between men who understood what it took to reach this moment. Karen didn't look at me as she shuffled out of the courtroom. Richard didn't either. For the first time, their power wasn't bigger than mine, and it never would be again. A week later, after the dust settled, I installed a new sign at the end of my gravel driveway. A heavy steel plate, powder-coated black, bolted into concrete sunk 3 feet deep. The letters were simple, but they carried weight. Private property. No HOA trespassers will be recorded, reported, and prosecuted. Beside the sign, I planted a wooden post with a small American flag. Nothing fancy. Just a quiet reminder of the thing this fight was really about. The right to live on your own land without fear, without harassment, without someone with a clipboard claiming ownership over your life. The wind caught the flag and lifted it, letting it snap gently against the morning air. It felt right. The kids are laughing again. My daughter paints in the sunroom every morning now. Bright colors, soft lines, like she's reclaiming her own sense of safety. My son started building a new model plane. I bought him better balsa wood this time, stronger wings, a sturdier frame. When he finished the first piece, he brought it to me and said, "Dad, this one's not going to break." I smiled. "Nobody," I told him. "Not this time." At night, the house finally feels like what it was meant to be. Quiet, warm, hours. No patrol cars creeping by. No envelopes demanding compliance. No strangers measuring the height of my grass. Just wind through the pines, kids settling in, freedom settling deeper. Every now and then, I still hear a car slow down at the end of the drive. Curiosity, probably. Someone remembering the story they saw online. But nobody comes down my road anymore. The sign sees to that. So does the truth. And for the first time since moving in, I can stand on my porch, look over 20 acres of land, and finally breathe the words I'd been chasing for years. Home. My home. And nobody's taking it again.